First and foremost, there's no clear definition on what a wicked problem is, which makes it already interesting. So there's a lack of definite formulation. But actually, the other 5 points are very crucial. So there is no true or false solution to a wicked problem. There is a good or a bad solution, a way you control it. It's a topic of discussion what the right way might be. There is no template to follow. So a wicked problem is always new in its factors. It's always complex, it's diverse, it's arising in the cultural setting of a certain country or a global setting. But it can be like transferred from one culture to another. And that's also, I think, bringing us to these learnings you have here from different countries. These things work in our context, in our culture, in our system. You always need to consider your national demands and your status quo you're starting off. So templates to follow, examples are nice, but not also 100% true for your context. I think with wicked problems is also there's a lack of immediate and ultimate test of solutions, because wicked problems arise and solutions are medium term to long term. Even in the short context, they might be 5 to 7 years. So the test is medium term. Indicators will develop on a very slow basis. So you don't know if your government, if your politicians, they need results very quick. Of course, you will have a problem with wicked problems here. There's also discrepancies in wicked problems that can be explained in multiple ways. Again, bringing us back, there's one solution. And the thing is, as I already mentioned, every wicked problem is unique, not only, but also a symptom of other problems. And here you see some examples, like demographic change relates to climate change. We in Austria, we have huge issues because our civil service is retiring. Over the next 12 years, we'll lose 50% of our civil servants. Well, that's an issue, so we have to redesign our processes, our structures, our ways we work. But also in terms of climate change, what are really the reasons for climate change? How can we address those? And actually, what's the next problem that's going to arise? And digitalization and globalization are huge factors, because actually one big problem, which also especially is a problem for traditional bureaucracies like the Austrian, very well established, very strong, but kind of slow. You know, digitalization, public demand asks us for quicker solution. Also, wicked problem asks for quicker solution, because in terms of climate change, we are drowning. So we cannot discuss it much longer. We need to find ways to address it, and we need to start now. Maybe we shouldn't start with the right solution in the beginning, but we should at least start. And that's the thing with the strategy. You can work years on a good strategy, but of course you have to implement. And so how do we do this in Austria? So we realized action is needed. Action is needed to address those wicked problems. And so there are 6 solutions from the guidebook how to address wicked problems. First of all, you should focus on outcomes rather on inputs on outputs. And Lithuania, you're quite ready with that, so you know that impacts outcomes are key here. There needs clear chains of responsibility and accountability. So you don't need just a strong public sector leads, but you need also strong civil servants who follow the leads and develop solutions on their own because they're working on the ground. Yeah? You need collaboration across internal silos, of course, within the organization, but also, and first and foremost, and that's the big issue for traditional bureaucracies, collaboration across sectors and disciplines. And I'm not talking about the traditional way to collaborate from government side to the public sector. We need the discussion on eye level, and we need to build on trust and find forums that we can collaborate with our partners across sectors. There needs evidence-based or evidence-supported policymaking. Of course, that's always strange talking about in times of fake news, about evidence-based policymaking and all of that. But actually, we need to provide our politicians, our senior civil servants, with data, information to make the right decision. If a politician decides to go its own way, it's up to him. That's the elections are for. But we as civil servants, we have to provide the data for evidence-based. And there needs framework conditions for innovation and change. And Austria has introduced to address those issues and to find those ways outcome orientation in 2013. So just to give you a short look into the logic behind. So before we started with inputs, we designed our budget very traditional. We basically, what we did is we described our new budget based on the old one without any major strategic organized learning circle, organizational learning. And in 2013, I will come back, we completely shifted the system. So we initiated the whole budgeting process by starting to talk first about the outcomes we want to achieve in the next period of 5 to 7 years within society. So defining outcome targets. That's a very simple example here, but basically it's about traffic accidents. So the outcome here we want to achieve is fewer traffic accidents involving injuries on Austrian roads. And just from that starting point, we would start thinking about the outputs. What outputs do we need for that? A new driver education campaign, new regulation, more police on the streets, whatsoever. So that would be our outputs we want to design. I'm very sorry, that was too fast. And just after that, we designed the activities to achieve these outputs, to set them out. So setting up new campaigns, designing awareness raising, and so on. And just after that, it's time talking about inputs. What kind of personal, financial, and other resources, also external resources, do we need to design these activities and to achieve medium-term these outcomes? Of course, on a slide, it's always very nice to present that. Of course, this line is not like indisruptive. Of course, you have external factors you have to consider. In this very simple example, an external factor which kills your best key performance indicators is a nice sunny autumn weekend in Austria. Many people on the roads, many accidents, many dead people. Sorry to say that, but these are simple external factors that might, if you talk about indicators, you also have to consider this. And of course, there are other factors here factoring in. But that is the idea behind, and we started in 2013 with introducing performance-informed budgeting plus, and that's most important, regular impact assessment. So every law, every regulation has to be focused and designed and evaluated according to its impact. So that was the approach, basically a two-step approach we took in Austria. So in 2009, the first framework was introduced, so we had a nice strategy. I liked how you think, because we had this before in the session asking you what is most important for good public services and delivery, and the strategy is super important. Of course it is important. But a strategy is just paper, and the thing is who's delivering the strategy. And these are the civil servants. And I think only 17% of you said for delivery, civil servants and a public service is really important. I would argue 90% is delivery, and maybe 10% in the end is strategy. Of course you need a strategic framework but you need competent and motivated civil servants. Senior staff, definitely, but also like junior level, everybody to deliver. So we took really a period of 4 years to develop our civil servants, to make them understand the new performance management framework. We could do better, yeah, we had 4 years, but we're talking about 140,000 civil servants. So we took this time to learn, to think about our outcomes we want to achieve. And then in 2013, we really started by introducing accrual accounting, introducing global budgets, and outcome orientation, or Wirkungsorientierung, as we call it in German. So that was the basic idea. I would like to show you how this works in practice. So here you see the Austrian budget structure, the organizational structure, and the performance structure. The whole budget, 74 billion euro approximately, subdivided into 5 headings, big policy fields. Not relevant for the strategy at this level. But then here we have budget chapter, 33 budget chapter. So one ministry would have 1 budget chapter is responsible for it. At least 1. The Ministry of Finance has 8 budget chapters because it's more powerful and more important, but regular ministries have 1 to 2. These can be like higher education might be such a budget chapter. And for each budget chapter, every ministry has to define a mission. So what's the purpose? Why are we here? What's the direction we're going? And a medium-term strategy. What do we want to achieve over the next 4 years with this chunk of money? But most important are the outcome statements. So 5 top priorities of the ministry the ministry wants to achieve over the next 5 years. 5 outcome objectives, plus we need to measure, yeah? Because we have a strategy, we have goals, but we need to make sure we underline, and we need to make sure that we might have to redesign some issues and be able to learn. So we have up to 5 indicators per outcome objectives to measure success. And these indicators are evaluated on a yearly basis. So, the level down, under the ministerial level, you have the Directorates General. And also, they get a global budget. Every Director General should have one global budget. And for each global budget, you would design output statements. And in these output statements, you will prioritize and have your 5 prioritarian activities and outputs you want to deliver over the next budget year. And these outputs are directly interlinked to the outcome. So you have to define to which outcome does this output really contribute. And again, we're measuring also those by indicators and milestones to measure success of our outputs. And then we go another level down to the departments. So every department will have a detailed budget. Responsible head of department has its detailed budget. And here is like a performance contract where you define the resources, personnel and financial inputs you put in, your objectives and your activities. Again, contributing to the activities of your Director General, contributing to the outcomes of the ministry. And so you have a cascade down from the top priorities of your minister, down from your strategy, down to each and every department, and over performance reviews by your civil servants to each and every single civil servant in the ministry. So that's how we wanted to achieve vertical cohesion between strategy and fact-based doing. And here you have this clear chain of responsibility and accountability. Another important field when we come to the wicked problems is a collaboration across internal silos. And gender equality would be here the cross-cutting matter. That's a very good example for how to address internal silos. So gender equality is a cross-cutting field in Austria. It's a political priority. And by law, every budget section has to define at least one gender-related outcome objective on each political level because it's a political priority. So the problem is we have autonomous ministries and autonomous supreme organs, a lot of stakeholders involved, big community, big interest groups. So how to establish processes to coordinate gender equality related to outcome objectives. And how to safeguard that all parties involved work in the same direction. So how did we do that? So let me give you just some ideas how because we talked about earlier, how to really design formats and how to safeguard that all parties involved go in the same direction. It's a lot of talk, it's a lot of communication. We brought all the stakeholders together in one room, all parties, all ministries involved, to, at least in one conference, inform about our idea of the system, how it works. But then we went directly into workshops. So all our conferences from them are like not single lectures and speaking from a podium to the people, but harvesting all the expertise, all the knowledge that is in the room and invite them to collaborate with us. So what we did is we designed processes where we meet every quarter, every 3 months, with all our partners, have World Cafe settings where we sit on specific tables and really work with our partners on the issues that arise in their field. So we designed from all of our outcome objectives regarding gender equality, we structured them because we had for each budget chapter, we had one outcome objectives towards gender equality. So we clustered them, we brought interested parties together in working groups, and they themselves design their way to work, their schedule, what are the next objectives they want to achieve, how they want to redesign their outcome objectives. They discuss themselves what indicators might be fitting for them. But that was a long-term approach because we needed also to convince the leadership of the different ministries to trust those civil servants to deliver the right results. So it's about building trust, building a network where you can rely on that is strong. And that brought us actually together that over now 7 years, we developed really a framework of gender targets across the whole budget structure. So here you see we have 7 clusters where we focus our work on in terms of gender equality. There's capacity building, decision making, labor market, and so on. And these cluster groups work freely. They also design their own workshops, how they like to meet. Some of them meet in person, some of them meet electronically. So what is important by addressing these issues, these cross-cutting issues, allow certain flexibility. You cannot regulate from top to bottom how it's going to be. It's always a top-down, bottom-up approach. You need flexibility. Of course, you need leadership that is strongly behind the process, but then you need to enable your civil servants, and that is crucial. Another issue regarding wicked problems is, as I told you, a solution is evidence-based, evidence-supported policymaking. As I already told you, it's not so that our politicians in Austria are super evidence-based. They just trust our data and make their decisions accordingly. They make their own decisions because they're elected for a certain narrative. And so they want to, they have to keep their promises, sometimes even though evidence would suggest differently. However, that's the political will, and that's how a democracy should work. Our job is to provide the data, but not like in a traditional way again. In the first year, we provided a report. We obliged to provide a report on key performance indicators in Austria. That's a paper like 350 pages. I can like, it's really heavy, it's really hard, and nobody really reads it, to be honest. Yeah, some parliamentarians maybe take a look at a specific structure. So we really had issues because we provided this data. We gathered over 1,000 indicators, and nobody's using them. How could it be? So the thing is, we thought about how to address the needs of the different stakeholder groups. And actually, we're in the time of digitalization. We have many tools at hand. So one of our first steps then was to design a user-friendly tool where not only the data is gathered in a semi-automatic way so that civil servants don't have to like really spend a lot of time putting their data in the system, but also the data is in an automated way provided on a transparent database. So at www.wirkungsmonitoring.gv.at, you will have the data in the slides afterwards. It's in German, unfortunately. You will find all indicators compiled in groups. So I can take a look at the Ministry of the Interior, look at their outcome targets, look at their indicators, and see how they are developing. So transparency is key. We as experts, we want evidence-based policy making because I think we know that's the right way to follow, especially when you think about climate change. That's not the time for, we have no time for fake news anymore. Yeah. So our goal is also, we call it leadership from below. So what we do is we put this data out in a transparent way. It's open data, yeah. So everybody can see it. Also our partners from NGOs, MPO, and they will hold the politicians responsible. So by introducing that, we raise awareness for evidence-based policy making on one hand and provide data for our politicians. And what we realize in Austria, the whole discourse, and that's what's so all about culture, the level of communication between NGOs, MPOs, and government changed. It's more context-focused now than it was 7 years ago. And that's also what the OECD said about our system, to be honest. So what's also key here is collaboration across sectors and disciplines. How does outcome orientation achieve that? We don't deliver every service to to the public. We need like organizations, MPOs, NGOs, social entrepreneurs to deliver in an efficient and effective way. Outcome orientation, outcome objectives, putting them out, making them transparent is a new narrative. It's a new language. It's a new language between the public and the private sector. It's a way to really, for the private sector to see what our goals are over the next few years and to really approach us and say, hey, I have a solution to your outcome objectives. I can be of help. And also we understand better who might support us when delivering social services. So an instrument would be social impact bonds, where you define outcome targets to achieve, you give them to the private sector, and you give them money after they achieved your outcome objectives. Outcome orientation is also a way to foster participation because you are able to design your outcome objectives, I mean your priorities of your government, in a participatory way by inviting NGOs, MPOs, citizens, not only to go to the voting booth every 5 or 4 years, but really to start a discussion with you to design joint outcome objectives. My nearly last point would be the framework conditions for innovation and change. What does outcome orientation enables us in Austria to do is we have a yearly monitoring of outcome objectives and outputs. So that's a continuous spanning review, program review. So to ask the question, who does what, how, in the most efficient and effective way? We need to discuss it on a yearly basis now. Yeah? And we have a framework to evaluate new ideas, new projects, innovative ways of work. And we have a new process that is actually, as it is focusing on impacts rather than inputs, opening up activities and outputs for new creative ideas and innovative solutions. And that's, I think, the most important thing. And that brought us 3 years ago to the creation of GovLab Austria, our public sector innovation lab, because we feel we have to fill these innovative spaces with also support for our civil servants and rooms to fail and to deliver. And on my last slide, I have the learnings, but I like to summarize them in 3 words. If you introduce such a system, you need to keep pushing, don't stop, just go ahead, improving your skills, improving the skills of your civil servants. Keep publishing, make everything you do transparent, because NGOs, NPOs, they will support your approaches towards more evidence, more transparency. And be patient. It takes time, at least 7 to 10 years. So relax and be patient. That's my message. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Apparently that's the reform that introduced not only top-down but also bottom-up. So there is that communication going on. So I have 2 questions from the audience. One is very technical and important. So if you start your planning from the setting of desired outcomes, it's very easy to overplan the budget. How do you manage that? Asking too much money for everything.
No, it's really a top-down, bottom-up approach. So it's not so much that you only focus on impacts and then you say, oh, I want to achieve this and I need double the budget. So it's always it's a form of communication, it's a form of negotiation, it's a form of prioritization. Impact orientation doesn't mean that everything is right. So you really need to be very strict and very focused, designing your 5 top priorities and then putting the cascade fine together. And then it's actually of support towards the Ministry of Finance, because it helps you to argue for your priorities and to get the money you need. And also, we're not talking only when it's about funding of the impacts, of the achievement of outcome objectives. That doesn't come all from the Ministry of Finance. Impact orientation means also that you need to find new and innovative ways to finance your product and services. And then I'm talking about social impact bonds, an example. So it's always a negotiation process. Yeah.
Okay.
Still.
Thank you. The other question was, you mentioned that for coordination work with stakeholders, there needs to be at least some level of trust. So what was the level of trust among stakeholders and government agencies, starting with ministries in Austria? What's the level of trust there?
Even in some ministries, we don't have the trust that we might need sometimes. Yeah, that's a long-term approach. You know, a traditional bureaucracy after Weber is like not trust-based. Yeah. So the thing is, it's really a change also to trust younger civil servants among the senior staff. That's one thing we achieved in some ministries by transparency. So making our goals transparent, really demanding yearly appraisal reviews with our junior staff. Really asking them for their contribution. It's just a discussion process. I'm sorry, I have no real clues or strategic papers on that. We try to establish it by being transparent, putting our information out there, and really engaging in a dialogue. And the Austrian Court of Audit, as an example, did this quite well. When they developed their strategy, of course, there was a political agenda set in the beginning, but then they immediately dispersed into little working groups where you find senior civil servants, junior civil servants, and really discussing on eye level. But you need to make sure that everybody sticks to the rules of discussion on eye level, so that a junior servant, civil servant, is not afraid to voice his opinion.
Right.
So these are the framework conditions.
Thank you. And one more question. Apparently, it took 4 years for you to go through the training, you said. What were, you think, the key conflicts, the key differences in opinions that had to be solved in order for that reform to go?
Well, the key problem was that it's a huge change process. So some people will have another job after the reform is done. And we talk about change a lot, but I'm not quite sure if we really like it because it's out of the comfort zone. It's if you do a job good for 5 years, if you restart your job and redesign, you might be bad for the next 3. So there's of course there are fears, and they are lying inside of us, and we will not like change it. But what is most important here is a new the culture of failing that must change. We need to accept failures and need to learn out of it instead of covering them. And I don't know how it's in Lithuania, but in Austria we have huge issues to disclose our failures. So if you achieve that, that might be a big issue. And to be honest, in a reform covering 140,000 civil servants, you will not be able to convince everybody. Who you need is really, in the first place, the leadership to start and to have the resources. And then you have to start setting up a network of civil servants that you're growing, that understand the reform, that get their benefits out of it. You always have to talk about benefits, and you have to communicate. And in communication, you always have to think about what the need of the target group is and really address those issues in a very specific and highly focused way.
Lovely. And the last question that we have here is, do you need structures or responsibilities at the government level to support the coordination of cross-ministerial programs? And is it done by a appointed ministry? How that cross-section works structurally?
We have clear responsibilities for coordination. So we're responsible for coordination of cross-cutting matters in outcome orientation. The Ministry of Innovation is responsible for the RTI strategy, just to give you an example, so they're clear responsibilities. The problem is, if it's done internally, you need trust. Because when one ministry is responsible for coordinating itself and the others on ICE level, you might have some issues, because some ministries are not disclosing information in the beginning, and maybe not. But to be honest, that's a medium-term approach. So I think in Austria at least, we have 140,000 civil servants, very competent people. I think we can do this on our own to coordinate. I don't think we need like external partners for that. But what is important is to have at least a seen independent body that makes sure that takes care of quality assurance. So we as a ministry are responsible for quality assurance of the whole outcome orientation process. So that's important to safeguard that everybody sticks to the same rules. So therefore you need like an independent partner, not external one, but independent.